Hey Game Code fans, and welcome to the show. I'm your host Stephanie Pelley, and we are the only video game show in Atlantic Canada. We're bringing you the latest and greatest on what's going on in the video game industry, made even better by doing it right here in Atlantic Canada and talking to some local folks as well. Here's what we have coming up for you in this episode. You think you have a big video game collection? Wait until you see John Paynter's hoard. The amount of vintage game collectibles this guy has acquired over the years will blow your mind, and we'll be chatting with him about his amazing collection. Gaming culture is becoming more and more of a focus of the film industry, and we're doing our very first review of the film, so make sure you stick around to hear about Indie Game the Movie, an award-winning documentary by Canadian filmmakers. To keep that indie spirit alive, we've got Mike Sharp on board to take a look at Rock of Ages, an action strategy game from independent developers Ace Team. And finally, we'll be bringing you the results from the Fiber Op Gaming League's Fall Cup, organized by Frag for Charity. If gaming and tournaments and cool prizes are your thing, stick around until the end of the episode to hear about how you can get in on the next tournament. All right, we're here with John Paynter, who's a local vintage game collector. John, first of all, I gotta say, this is incredibly impressive. I've never seen anything like this in real life. Obviously, you've put a lot of time and care into it. What got you into collecting and why have you kept it up?
Well, I always collected things when I was younger, and I've always liked video games. So recently someone gave me a Nintendo system with about 40 games or so, and I just kind of exploded since then.
Now, you've kind of trimmed down the collection a bit recently. I can't imagine what it must have looked like when it was in its entirety, but you're specializing a little bit more now. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I originally wanted to start off by collecting NES, which are original Nintendo games, and basically I got a little out of hand and I started collecting everything else, and it just kind of makes it difficult to collect a whole bunch of different things at once, so I've started to focus more on one system. My first video game memory that I have actually was before I had a Nintendo, and it was playing E.T. for the Atari 2600. Yep, my very first memory was E.T., the landfill game, the worst game ever made.
So, how has it been coming along? Like, what have been some of your best finds?
Some of the best finds actually weren't even the original Nintendo system games. I found Atari Jaguar games and an Atari Jaguar system and CD attachment, and that was probably the rarest thing I've come across. And recently I actually got my hands on a copy of Scat for NES, which is a pretty rare game, so I found that local and it was nice to find.
So, in your opinion, what would make a game rare, and what are some of those maybe like harder to find titles?
Well, the low production numbers is what really makes the games rare. There are a few games that are Blockbuster-only rental games, so a handful of those ones that are out there are really hard to find. You can only buy them after Blockbuster decided to get rid of their games. One in particular is Flintstone Surprise the Dinosaur Peak, and currently one just went online for about $900, so that's really what makes them rare, is just the low production numbers and the inability to get them. So
we've talked to a couple of retro gamers on this show so far, and we always kind of like to ask this question: why do you think there's kind of a resurgence of retro games? Does it mean that current games are not as good, or maybe people are just kind of nostalgic? Why do you think people still kind of hang on to that old?
Well, for me personally, it's a little bit of both. I'm not a huge fan of any modern games at all. I just find that they're way too easy. You can run through the game, you can save the game. There may be about 4 NES games I've actually completed to the end, and I like the ability to not be able to just sit down and beat it without having any problems. Also, with the old games, it brings back a feeling of like when you're younger, you go down, you rent a game on Friday, and you have it for the whole weekend, you get to play it with your friends, and it's just a lot nicer.
So you have the virtual console on the Wii now, and you have like the emulators that you can get for your PC, which basically kind of lets you play any game you want. What's the appeal of actually having the game and having those original systems?
The way I kind of look at it is, it's like a coin collector. You can look at it on the internet and see a picture of one, but to actually have a physical copy in your hand, it's nice. Also with the systems, the virtual console in particular, you don't get the actual original controller, so you have to use the Wii controller. With having the real copies, you can actually get the full gameplay.
So, if someone's interested in starting to collect, how would you suggest like tips or pointers for them to get started?
The main thing that I would say is pick a system that you really like and stick with it. That was my biggest problem, is I got way off and started collecting for everything, as you can see. And so it makes it a little bit harder to find games for a system and have the extra funds to be able to buy the rare ones when you come across them. My girlfriend is part of this collection as well, yes. We've been collecting together for 2 years now, so it works out all right. There's some games that I don't want to buy that she insists on buying. We actually found a copy of Princess Tomato recently, and while it's a rare game, I don't really see the point of buying one that's that much money if it's that bad, but I guess we gotta get them all anyway, so.
So it looks like you've got a couple of Nintendo systems. Can you tell me about a few of these?
For the original systems themselves, I've got two different action sets here. This is actually a later model. This came out around '93, and the box is a little bit different. This one here is about a midway point. It has the orange zapper with it. And the one up top is a Japanese original Nintendo, and it's they're over there. They're called Famcoms. And on the other side over here, there's a few other Nintendo systems as well. Both control decks and two different variations of them. Basically, for me to be able to get this much room in a house for a game collection, I have to pretty much have no say in any other room in the house. So, yep, I get one room. It looks pretty bad, but at least it's full of games.
Now, do you play any of the kind of newer generation games and consoles?
The only real games I really play are, I like handheld games. I play Vita a lot, and I played the occasional game of Call of Duty.
Now, hypothetically speaking, if you'd turn your back and maybe if I pinched one of these games off the shelf, how long would it maybe take you to notice that one was missing?
On this wall here, it might take me a little while. I'd know probably that one was missing. I wouldn't know where it was from. That wall, on the other hand, I could definitely pick out one right away. I have them all in alphabetical order, and I know pretty much every game I own, so that one there is a little bit easier to figure out.
What's your favorite vintage game?
My favorite vintage game I'm gonna have to say is Earthbound.
Oh, how interesting. I can't stand Earthbound. I'm sorry.
I don't get it. But why?
Because you had to go home to your mom in the game.
That's the only reason? What about the hippies? The hippies are awesome.
And the boxes
no way. So much awesome pop culture music. The Beatles? They're all in it. They're not called the Beatles, but...
Well, I have a love-hate relationship with the Beatles as well. But I understand, like the Beatles, even though I don't like it, I understand how people can like it.
I do understand why people don't like the game. I definitely do. Yeah. I can definitely understand that. What about Final Fantasy VII?
Second favorite game of all time.
Okay, well that's all right.
All right, we've established kinship.
Yeah.
John, it was great to see your collection. Thanks so much for letting us in here and having a look.
No problem.
Very cool. Now, I obviously can't come close to the amount of cool stuff that John Paynter has, but I did bring a few items that I've kept over the years, and I think these are pretty old and def give me some street cred for being very vintage. I've got my original Game Boy handheld, so check this out. I've got a few games for it, like Tetris and Yoshi's Cookie, and it actually still works. You can play it, but the screen's a little shagged, so I might want to see if there's anything that can be done to fix that. But I've also got, and this is kind of the crown jewel of my collectibles, this is my old Super Mario Brothers lunchbox that I used to take to elementary school with me. It's dated about 1989, so it's about 24 years old, and from the looks of the artwork on it, I'm thinking this is probably around the Super Mario Brothers 3 time period. So a few things that I've saved over the years. We'd love to hear from you about any vintage games or gaming gear that you haven't had the heart to part with over the years, so hit us up on Facebook and Twitter to let us know. And even include a photo if you can, and maybe we'll use it in our next episode. So get at us on Twitter at GameCodeTV or on Facebook at facebook.com/GameCodeTV. Coming up, we're taking a look at an award-winning documentary that gives a dramatic look into the behind the scenes of independent video game development. We're talking about Indie Game the Movie, coming up next.